Welcome to Mickey, Marvel, and More, Disney News, Commentary, and Opinion. From theme parks to Thanos and from Skywalker to Skyliner, my family and I will discuss it all. So let's go!
Please stand clear of the doors. Por favor, manténganse alejado de las puertas.
Hello, Mark here, and welcome to another episode of Mickey, Marvel, and More. Thanks so much for stopping by to hang out with us today. Whether you're a first time or a long time, we really appreciate you being here with us. Buses, monorails, boats, oh my! There are so many ways to travel around Walt Disney World property, but not everybody understands all the options. Or maybe they do, but they're overwhelmed by the choices. In the family chat, Laura and I are going to sit down around the virtual table and have a full discussion about Walt Disney World transportation options. What's the fastest way to get from point A to point B? What are your transportation options staying at a particular resort? Or should you just rent a car and drive yourself? Well, stick around for the family chat and we'll give you all the info you're ever going to need. But first, how about a little news from in and around the Disneyverse?
Hey, we don't serve their kind here.
What?
Your droids. They'll have to wait outside. We don't want them here.
Remember the Star Wars Galactic Starcruiser experience that was canceled after only being open for a little longer than a year? Remember how Josh D'Amaro once was quoted as saying something will happen with the Galactic Starcruiser? Well, they announced what they're going to do with it, and I hope you're sitting down because this is super exciting. Okay, here it is. The Galactic Starcruiser building is being turned into offices for Walt Disney World Imagineering. That's right, the highly detailed, super immersive, one-of-a-kind Star Wars experience is being turned into office space. In earlier episodes of Mickey, Marvel, and More, we had speculated that maybe they would turn it into some sort of daytime excursion for park guests, where they would pay some sort of an extra fee and exit Galaxy's Edge and quote-unquote fly up to the Halcyon and experience some of what the Galactic Starcruiser had to offer. Well, I guess that's never going to happen. I guess it doesn't come as a total surprise, though, because CEO Bob Iger had reportedly rejected the idea to retheme the venue to something like The Mandalorian or offer tours for day guests, but it was never officially confirmed that he had said that. A permit was filed for general construction on the property back in January 2024 with a local construction firm, but it was unclear as to what that was going to be used for. But now we know what the fate of the Halcyon Starcruiser will be. Several sources, including someone closely tied to the Walt Disney Company, have said that it will be turned into Imagineering's hub for all the upcoming Walt Disney World expansion projects, including the Tropical Americas area over at Animal Kingdom, and all the expansions coming to the Magic Kingdom like the Cars area and the Disney Villains Land, and then also the expansion over at Hollywood Studios for the Monsters, Inc. area. For my family, this just reopens the wound of never having experienced the Galactic Starcruiser when we had the chance. This will probably always be our family's biggest Disney theme park regret. If there is a silver lining to this story, maybe it's this. In discussing the news story with the family, Zachary pointed out that maybe this will free up some space over behind Animation Courtyard where they currently have Disney office space. And perhaps by freeing up that office space, they'll have more room to do something really exciting over in Animation Courtyard in Hollywood Studios. That area has been underutilized and a dead space for a really long time. Well, only time will tell.
You will never find the more wretched hive of scum and villainy. We must be cautious.
As I just said, one of the biggest regrets my family has was not being able to visit and experience the Galactic Starcruiser. It was on our to-do list, but it closed before we could get there. But what if I told you you could still have an immersive, overnight Star Wars experience? I'm not talking about hiding out somewhere in Galaxy's Edge and wait for the park to close. No. I'm talking about a legitimate experience. Dear listeners, I present to you Star Wars Glamping. That's right, you heard me right, Star Wars Glamping. For those that don't know, glamping refers to camping in a way that's more high end than just pitching a tent and sleeping under a tree. Okay, so there's this place called Outpost X in Beryl, Utah, and it's located in an area that could literally pass for Tatooine. Don't get me wrong, if you want to sleep in a tent and potentially wake up covered in porgs or womp rats, you can still do that there. But at Outpost X, you can also rent out your own Tatooine like cave with all the comforts of home, a kitchenette, heated blankets, heating and air conditioning, but it's like you're on Tatooine. They also have a spa and a game room and a self serve bar with clues and surprises for an immersive cocktail experience. And they also have a meditation room. Oh, I'm sorry, I left out the best part. They also have land speeders. That's right, frickin' land speeders. Don't get me wrong, they have wheels and they don't hover, but they look exactly like land speeders. You can also rent Star Wars costumes to live out your Star Wars fantasy. I assume you can also bring your own outfits if you want to. And if you love food and cooking, you can even book a culinary experience where all the ingredients and recipes for your meals during your day are waiting for you in your cave or tent or whatever you book. And you can do it all in your own kitchenette. They also have all kinds of other experiences that they offer, and prices for the cave start at $390 a night. The Viking tents they offer are $130 a night, and they also have something called a Zen Dome for $320 a night. But come on, let's be real. If you're going there, you're gonna want to sleep in a Tatooine cave. As I said before, Outpost X is in Beryl, Utah, and it's located near 7 national parks. The closest one is Zion National Park, and it's about an hour and a half away from there. The links with all the information will be in the show notes. Frickin' land speeders. And last and definitely tiniest, Walt Disney World welcomed a litter of baby otters recently over at Disney's Animal Kingdom. These are Asian small clawed otters, the smallest otter species in existence, and it looks like there are at least 3 pups in this litter. The litter was born to Mom May, who is taking care of them backstage under the watchful eyes of the animal care team. Dad Kevin is also actively involved in the process of raising the pups. Over the next few months, the pups will reach key milestones like opening their eyes, trying solid foods, and learning to swim. Guests will be able to see the otter pups in person on Discovery Island soon. Be sure to check out the show notes for all the adorable pictures. As always, Mickey, Marvel, and more will always keep you up to date with all of the animal news, big and small, out of the Disney theme parks. So stay tuned.
If you are standing, please hold on to the handrails and stay clear of the doors. The monorail will depart momentarily. Thank you.
So you're planning a Walt Disney World trip and you've made a list of all the activities you want to do and all the places you want to visit. But how are you going to get to all these places? Monorail, motor coach, Skyway, Tinkerbell's magic? Well, we've got some answers for you. And speaking of Tinkerbell, let's bring in my wife, Laura. With her bag full of pixie dust and break it all down. Welcome back, Tink.
Thanks. Wow, with an introduction like that, I don't know how to follow that up.
So, Disney transportation, getting around Walt Disney World, what are our options?
So many of our listeners may not realize that there are multiple ways to get around Disney World. One of the most relaxing aspects of a Disney trip, in my mind, is parking your car at the hotel and then not having to drive for the rest of the week.
Oh, yes.
Relying on Disney transportation to take you everywhere you want to go for the next 7 days. That's very relaxing and I think a great way to enjoy a vacation.
For sure.
So you may not know what the transportation options are from various hotels to the parks and Disney Springs. So basically, there's 5 basic transportation options that are offered by Disney. Monorail, boat, the newest, which is their Skyway gondola system,
The Skyliner.
buses, and minivans. Now, of those 5 options, 4 of them are free. One of them is paid. That's the minivans, and we'll talk about that later.
Okay.
So most Disney hotels, particularly the deluxe resorts, have more than one way to get to at least one park.
Like, for example, the Contemporary and the Grand Floridian and the Polynesian. So from those locations, you can get by monorail to Magic Kingdom. You can get by monorail to Epcot. I believe the Polynesian has a boat that goes to the Magic Kingdom. And then you've got the buses that they take from to other locations. So those are examples right there of what the deluxe resorts offer for more than one park for sure.
You can also walk from those resorts to the Magic Kingdom, which is, I suppose, a mode of transportation, but it is another way to consider getting to and from the parks.
Well, when you're staying at the Contemporary or Bay Lake Tower, that is primo reason for staying there is you can walk right in. You get your own separate security check-in, so you only have to do it in that one little space as opposed to waiting in line with hundreds of other people. You've only got maybe 10 people in front of you before you're past security, so that's great.
It's definitely a convenience. Another example is the Riviera, which is Disney's newest deluxe resort. They have Skyliner access to Epcot and to Hollywood Studios. You take a bus to everywhere else, but that Skyliner access at Riviera is very nice.
Oh, for sure.
Then if you consider the Yacht Club, the Beach Club, and the Boardwalk, those have boat access, both to Epcot and Hollywood Studios. You can also walk to both of those parks.
A lot of people don't realize you can walk to Hollywood Studios, but it's not a very long. It's not as long of a walk as you would think it would be.
Not at all. Maybe a 10-minute walk.
Yeah, that's what they tell us. We've never done it.
Yeah, but it is close by. Another example is the Wilderness Lodge, where you take a boat to Magic Kingdom, which is kind of an interesting option, and buses for everywhere else.
Which kind of makes it hard to say, spend the extra money to stay at this deluxe resort, but only get one mode of transportation, essentially, which is bus.
Right. And that is a consideration, I think, when you're deciding what resort to stay at.
Oh, for sure. When you're spending that much money,
yeah,
and the only perk you get is a little boat over to Magic Kingdom, and if that boat's full, you've got to wait for the next one.
Yeah. Which brings me to another point, the Animal Kingdom Lodge.
Yeah.
Beautiful deluxe resort. And of course, one of the highlights of that resort is the live safari animals that you can view at multiple locations from rooms and other common areas around the lodge.
There. As a matter of fact, we just stayed there for that very reason.
Right. But one of the downsides of Animal Kingdom Lodge is that they only have bus access to the parks, which is really unusual for a deluxe resort. It's the only Disney deluxe resort that has bus only as their sole means of transportation.
Right. And it is the farthest away from any of the resorts. The only park that it's close to is Animal Kingdom. And what fascinates me about that is you still have to take a bus to Animal Kingdom. They didn't build in some sort of special entry, which makes total sense that they would want to do that. But the only way to get there is by bus, and you're right next door.
Right.
It makes it a tough sell for an upcharge to stay at a deluxe resort to not have any other transportation privileges.
Yeah. You know, just anecdotally, we've noticed that when we're looking around for open reservations, that of the deluxe resorts, Animal Kingdom Lodge seems to have the most availability.
Right.
And I just wonder if that isn't because of the limited transportation options.
You've got to think that probably does play a factor. I mean, I would think it does. I mean, we stay there just because we want to have the animal experience, and we know that it's going to be bused everywhere else, and we've made that conscious decision. But a lot of people don't realize that when they're planning their first trip to Disney World, and they're like, oh, we can stay by the animals. And then you get there, and the only way to get other places is bus.
Yeah.
And they work relatively efficiently, but there are some days where the wait is longer than 20 minutes for a bus.
Yeah, the bus system in Disney World is not perfect, but considering all of the people that they have to haul to all of these various locations, it's not bad.
For sure. But just keep that in mind when you're talking about visiting Animal Kingdom Lodge as your resort.
So, something else to consider when you're thinking about transportation options is not only does Disney offer transportation to the theme parks from each of its hotels, but it also offers transportation from the hotels to Disney Springs. And also, there are some direct resort to resort transportation options.
Correct. Yeah.
So, for example, there are resorts, not just deluxe resorts, that have access to Disney Springs by something other than a bus.
Right.
So, for example, our old favorite, Port Orleans.
Oh, first resort is
Yeah.
always the resort in your heart.
That's right.
We stayed there for our honeymoon and then multiple trips after that. Good old French Quarter.
Yep. So, Port Orleans is a moderate resort. But one of the nice features of that resort is that you do have boat access to Disney Springs. You can take a little boat from the resort directly to Disney Springs, and it's a lovely little boat ride.
Yeah.
That just kind of adds an extra element of pixie dust and magic to your already amazing Disney vacation.
Well, it's great because, yeah, it's a moderate resort, but you've got two transportation options, which is
Disney
nice.
Springs, yeah.
I mean, so you get bused everywhere else, but you get a special backdoor entrance to Disney Springs.
There are a couple of other resorts that also have that boat access to Disney Springs. They're both DVC resorts, Old Key West and Saratoga Springs.
Right.
So you do have a couple of other options, but again, it's at that higher price point. It's really nice, I think, when Disney surprises us with having the extra transportation option from a lower price point resort.
Oh, definitely. Now, you can walk from Saratoga Springs to Disney Springs.
Yes.
It's not a long walk. So, I mean, there's another option there as well. But again, it's more money.
There's also some boat access in between a couple of resort hotels. For example, there's a boat from the Contemporary Resort to the Fort Wilderness campgrounds.
Correct.
Which is a nice way to get over to that resort if you want to enjoy the Hoop-de-Doo Review or just walk around and enjoy the rustic campgrounds.
Yeah, I'm pretty sure the main reason they put that boat in was for the Hoop-de-Doo Review because that's how everybody gets there.
So while we're talking about different transportation options, I think Disney did something really interesting when they installed their Skyliner, which are those aerial gondolas that are Disney's newest transportation option that opened a few years ago. So when Disney installed that transportation line, they gave access to that not just from the Deluxe Riviera Resort, but they also gave access to a moderate resort, the Caribbean Beach Resort, and two value resorts, the Pop Century and Art of Animation.
That was a big first for Disney giving a second mode of transportation, and not just a second mode, but an amazing second mode of transportation to a value resort, two value resorts.
Well, so interesting. So Caribbean Beach is the oldest of the Disney moderate resorts. It was Disney's very first moderate resort.
I didn't realize that.
And I think Disney, learned from its mistakes, as it often does, and decided that there were maybe some challenges with the way that Caribbean Beach was laid out. It was very spread out, had a lot of low buildings that were grouped around multiple pools. But if you were in one of those buildings that was farthest away from the main building, it could have been really, challenging to get to the food court in a timely manner.
Well, we've never stayed there before, but one of the more recent trips, and it was just Zach and I at this particular moment, we were on the Skyliner and weather shut the Skyliner down. So we had to walk from the Skyliner access point all the way to the bus stop at Caribbean Beach. It was at this point that we realized just how spread out and big Caribbean Beach is. It was a good 10 to 15 minute walk for us to get. Of course, we had no idea where we were going, so we were kind of following signs. But I see why people are reluctant to stay there because it is huge for a moderate resort.
Yeah, before the Skyliner was built, Caribbean Beach was definitely the least popular of the moderate resorts. It was the oldest, it was the most spread out, it got the lowest ratings. Interestingly enough, once the Skyliner was built, it suddenly has become very popular as a moderate resort. And Disney upcharges those rooms that are closest to the Skyliner. So talk about, giving a whole new lease on an old resort. They could have done nothing in terms of upgrades to the actual rooms or amenities,
Right.
but just by proximity to the Skyliner made those rooms so much more valuable.
What a surprise. Disney saw a chance to grab a little extra cash, and they did.
I know. But, similar effect with Pop Century and Art of Animation. Those were both value resorts, particularly Pop Century, that was not one of the more popular value resorts. I think for whatever reason, the All-Star movies, All-Star sports, All-Star music tended to be pretty popular.
Those are usually used by huge groups of kids that are there for sports-related activities and the cheer competitions because of their location to the wide world of sports resort. So it kind of makes sense why those are popular. Pop Century is near that area, but it's a little further away.
Sure. But once the Skyliner was built, Pop Century and Art of Animation both became much more popular resorts. And I know Art of Animation has become somewhat more expensive. I'm not sure about those rooms at Pop Century that are closest, but I know that they are almost impossible to get reserved.
Right. I mean, if you request a certain building, you're not going to probably get that building that's closest to the Skyliner unless you are first in line making that request. Of course, over at Art of Animation, those have been expensive to begin with. A lot of those are suites, as I recall.
Yeah.
We've never stayed there. It looks really cool, but for a value resort, quote unquote, it's pretty expensive.
Yeah, it is. It is. And I'm sure, again, with the Skyliner access, that has just continued to increase the popularity and the cost of that hotel. So we've talked about how most of the theme parks have more than one way to arrive at the theme park, except, as you mentioned before, Animal Kingdom.
Right.
Which is the only Disney theme park that is accessible only by bus.
Yep.
There is no other mode of transportation that can take you to Animal Kingdom, which I think is really puzzling. And I wonder why Disney has never added a second mode of transportation, like you mentioned, particularly from the Animal Kingdom Lodge.
It should have been direct access. There
Yes.
should have been like a little shuttle or like a very scenic walkway, maybe with some extra animals along the way. I mean, that would have been, to me, that seems like a no-brainer, but they didn't do it.
It makes me wonder if that doesn't contribute to one of the reasons why Animal Kingdom has the lowest attendance of all four of the Disney theme parks. I know it also has to do with number of attractions, the fact that it
sure.
has the fewest attractions. But still, the infrastructure is there. You would think that they would want to encourage as many people to get there as easily as possible. But as of right now, it's only by bus. And that
It
remains
is.
a mystery to me why
Yeah.
Disney has never changed that.
It seems like they kind of like hobbled themselves from the get-go when it came to Animal Kingdom. At least from the lodge, they should have given us something, but I don't want to harp on that too much. It
Right.
is kind of puzzling, though.
So one mode of Disney transportation that I mentioned earlier, but that we haven't talked about, is the minivans.
Yeah.
And that is the one form of transportation that is not complimentary and included with your Disney World Resort package.
And technically not even run by Disney.
Yeah, it's actually powered through Lyft. And much like any other Uber or Lyft service, it works through an app. You pay for it. You pay market pricing. So whatever the price is that's quoted at the time that you're looking for service is the price that you pay. If you've ever been to Disney World and you've seen these minivans, and by the way, when I say minivans, they are minivans, M-I-N-N-I-E, as in Minnie Mouse.
Because they've got the polka dots like her little dress.
Yes, they have a very distinctive custom paint job that has partially black and then red and white polka dots, just like Minnie Mouse's dress.
Right.
So they're very distinctive and very cute when you see them driving around the resorts.
And they do use the van because that way they can transport more than just 4 people at a time.
Yeah, it has a capacity of 6. And one of the benefits of the minivans over a regular lift is I believe all of the minivans have car seats available. So
Right.
particularly for families with small children, that can be a real safety benefit. So typically the minivans pick up in about 7 minutes from any location on Disney property. So relatively quick wait time. And then they deliver you to your intended destination, whether that's one of the parks or another resort hotel or Disney Springs.
So what is the advantage of using a minivan over, say, a regular lift?
Right. So it's interesting when you are on the app, it shows you both the options for the minivan, but then it also shows you your regular lift options. And the wait times, generally speaking, are the same because I believe they're coming from the same places, more or less. And so it's about a 7-minute wait time. Interestingly enough, the price for a minivan is 2 to 3 times more expensive than a regular lift of the same size.
What? A Disney upcharge?
Right. So on a recent, time in particular, someone was looking to get a lift from their hotel to the Magic Kingdom, and the quoted price for a minivan that seats 6 was in the $30 range. A Lift XL, which also would seat 6 people, same arrival time of 7 minutes, was charging $10 or $11 for the same service.
So like twice as much.
Yeah. So there's basically 3 advantages to the minivan over a regular lift vehicle. First is the car seats that I've mentioned, which is important if you've got little ones, but not so important if you don't have kids that are in car seats. The minivans have access to the back roads that other Disney transportation vehicles have access to, but are not open to the public.
So the regular lift vehicle couldn't use those roads.
That's right.
That was something when we were putting this list together that I didn't realize was the case.
And that doesn't come up all that often, but in certain times when there is a lot of traffic, like during a Disney marathon, or if there's a cheer competition, or some other super heavy traffic time, it could be a real advantage to taking one of those minivans and being able to travel in all the secret roads around the Disney theme park that a regular lift can't ride on.
Right.
Then the other big benefit of the minivans versus lift, if you're going to Magic Kingdom, is the minivan will drop you at the front gate, and a regular lift is only allowed to drop you at the Ticket and Transportation Center.
Okay. So yeah, I've seen the minivans parked right at the edge of the bus stop zone, which is essentially a few steps away from the security location for Magic Kingdom.
Yes.
So, wow. So if you take a regular lift, you've got to go to the Ticket and Transportation Center, and then you've got to either take a monorail or the ferry boat over. So you've got another level of transportation you need to use. So I guess you're paying that extra, $15 or whatever it is to get direct access to Magic Kingdom. So I'm assuming that the other parks will also cost more if you use the minivan, but you don't really get any advantage over a regular lift in those locations. Because I think I've seen where those locations are, and they're all in the same area. The minivans and the regular lift and Ubers and taxis all go to the same place. So you get an advantage of the Magic Kingdom with the minivan, but not necessarily any advantage at the other parks.
Right. And that kind of leads me to my own opinion on minivans, which is, the Disney buses generally are pretty good. And even though they say that you'll definitely get a bus to wherever you want to go in 20 minutes, usually at most times it's less than that. And they have the digital arrival times there at the bus stops. So you always know when your bus is getting ready to arrive, more or less. If you have to wait 7 minutes for your minivan to come and pick you up, and then you have to pay for it, and it drops you off at the same spot that the buses drop you off, I don't know that you get there any faster with a minivan versus bus transportation.
Yeah.
And you don't get an advantage of getting dropped off any closer.
Except for Magic Kingdom, yeah.
Yeah, so in my opinion, I'm not sure that the minivans are worth it, except in certain very specialized circumstances.
Yeah, I think you're right. I think that using the bus is just as easy, and it's free.
Right.
Included with your park ticket.
Right.
So unless you just don't like people.
Well, and there is something to be said after you've been to Disney during a very crowded, hot, sweaty time. The seventh day in a row that you've been shoved onto a bus with a mass of humanity and everybody's sweaty and hot and tired. I suppose I might shell out the $30 for a minivan after having done that, but I don't know. I haven't gotten to that point yet.
No, I don't think so either. And, and I will say something we've not mentioned yet about the monorail in particular. I think it's time for the monorails to be replaced with the next generation of monorail, because for at least the last 10 years, they constantly smell like a rhino cage. Even when there's nobody on board.
What is that smell?
I don't know. It's like it's seeped into the material. I guess it's just years and years of theme park sweat have soaked into the cushions and into the walls. But they do have a very distinctive odor. Anybody that has ever ridden on a monorail knows exactly the smell that I'm talking about right now. As a matter of fact, we're all smelling it in our mind.
So that leads me to my final question, which is, I wonder what the future of Disney transportation holds.
I have a theory. I think that they are going to most likely run more Skyliner paths. There was talk for years after they, built Disney Studios, or when they were under the construction of building Disney MGM Studios, is there going to be monorail access? Because at the time, that was the thing. You got a monorail to the Magic Kingdom. There's a monorail to Epcot. Well, I guess there'll be a monorail over to the studios. But they didn't. And most people don't realize this, but it is incredibly hard for them to put the monorail pylons into the ground. Because if you know anything about the way the ground in Florida is, it is about 50% sand. And they have to put those pylons so far down where they can actually hit something that will support the monorail track that it is cost prohibitive to put in more monorails, because, things that it sounds simple. Well, let's build more monorails. But those pylons, and they go every 50 yards, there's another pylon. So it is really hard for them to build monorail because it's so heavy. So I don't think we're ever going to see any more monorail tracks being built. I could be wrong, but I have a feeling no. I think that the Skyliner type vehicle is much lighter. The poles are much lighter. They don't have to go as far down into the ground. And I think it's cheaper to build them than it is monorail tracks.
I tend to agree with you that I think they will be more likely to expand the Skyliner access than they would be to expand the monorail for the reasons that you just mentioned. Do you think that they are likely to expand that Skyliner access to additional theme parks first, or to additional hotels?
Well, I think to actually make it useful, they're going to have to go to other hotels to really get value, or to give people value out of it. I think it would be a super long run, because it is at the far edge of property, Animal Kingdom, which I think may lead to some of its underperforming in numbers, is it is the farthest theme park away from the central location of Disney property. I would like to see Skyliner access to there. I think that would really encourage more people to go. I'm not saying people don't go to Animal Kingdom. We always go. Whenever we go, and most of the people we know also go, but it does underperform compared to the other parks. I think it would really get a shot in the arm if they were able to put Skyliner access to there.
Do you think Disney will ever use a new mode of transportation? For example, a train?
Possibly.
So something that I learned recently is that the Fort Wilderness campgrounds used to have a steam-powered train that ran through it.
It did.
It ran through the campgrounds and to River Country and back. It wasn't open for very long, 1974 until about 1977. And then it ran sort of sporadically until it was finally shut down in 1980. Had too many problems with maintenance, noise, safety problems.
It also ran out of fuel.
Yes,
it would run out of fuel mid-trip.
Yes. Yeah. So it just ended up being more trouble than it was worth. But it made me think about whether something like that could be an option from the Animal Kingdom Lodge to Animal Kingdom Park. You know, they have that train that runs back to Conservation Station.
Right.
I wonder if that train couldn't be repurposed to run between the park and Animal Kingdom Lodge.
Possibly. I mean, that seems like it could be something they could do.
I mean, it certainly
or at least add another train.
Fits within the theme of both the resort and the park and is unique. And so I've wondered whether or not that would be something that Disney might do.
They could very well do that. I don't know that they would change the route. I think they would be more likely to build another train. That would be of the similar theme, and then give people at Animal Kingdom Lodge special access. I think that would be great. I think that would really encourage more people to stay there. I mean, it's a beautiful resort and the animals are amazing to see. So it is definitely worth going there, even if it's only bus. But you have to keep that in mind when you're spending all this cash on a deluxe resort, and the safari rooms with the safari view cost more.
Sure.
So yeah, I think that there may be a future expansion of the Skyliner. I think the idea of a train is intriguing. I think that I think they would be more likely to build an internal train, much like the Conservation Station train from the lodge to the resort. That might be something that I could see them doing. Of course, we keep calling it Conservation Station. Now it's Rafiki's Planet Watch.
Yes.
But we will die on that hill. It is Conservation Station.
Conservation Station forever in our hearts.
Yeah, that's for sure. Do you have anything else to say on this topic?
No, I just always think it's really interesting to consider all the different transportation options. And it'll be interesting to see what Disney does in the future.
We'll see you next time.
Pull the lever, Kronk. Wrong lever! Why do we even have that lever?
Thanks so much for joining us for another episode of Mickey, Marvel, and More. And a special thanks to Laura for being here in the family chat to help us map out the Walt Disney World transportation system. You see what I did there? Map? Our writers are so strong. Make sure you check out this episode's show notes for all the adorable baby otter pictures and the info for Star Wars Glamping. Our family are really more hotel people, but this just might convince us to branch out. Hey, while you're there in the show notes, check out the links to all of our socials. And if you have any comments, ideas, or any good roasted womp rat recipes, just click on our email and send us a message to Mickey, Marvel, and More, all one word, @gmail.com. As always, if you've enjoyed this episode, my name is Mark, and this has been Mickey, Marvel, and More. If you didn't, who am I kidding? I have to say it again. Frickin' land speeders. We'll see you next time.